He slid a folded note under my door at around 2 a.m. The paper was thin, the handwriting small and deliberate. It said simply, "I'm watching you." That sentence ought to have been a joke. Instead, it felt like somebody had stepped inside the fragile circle of privacy I carried with me on the road. The suitcase, the toiletries, the deadbolt that makes a room feel like yours for a few hours. By the time the third note appeared, folded and placed just the same way, the third message claimed, "I'm in the room again." That night I packed everything and left at 3 a.m., and I never stayed there again. These are 4 harrowing hotel horror stories, witnesses, staff, and guests who say the ordinary anonymity of a chain room turned into something invasive and terrifying. Some of these accounts were widely shared online and reportedly made headlines in local outlets. Others were told directly by the people who lived them. I will qualify what we can verify and treat what we can't as alleged, because the line between rumor and evidence is thin. But I won't soften the fear. I won't hide the way it felt to realize the place you thought you were alone in might not be private at all. Story 1. Pennsylvania. The notes. I'm on the road a lot. Weekdays I sleep in hotels. I know the rhythm. Check in, a quick shower, a tiny takeout meal, sleep with the TV murmuring something in the background until the alarm breaks the night. This was one of those cheap hotels off the interstate, nondescript, fluorescent lit, the kind with a vending machine that never works. I pulled the curtains closed and locked the deadbolt, like always. The first note was subtle, a narrow fold of paper. When I opened the door, I almost missed it, tucked under the gap like a scrap that belonged to the room. I remember thinking it was a prank from the floor staff, maybe someone bored on a night shift. The note said, "You're quiet." I laughed and crumpled it up. Of course I kept it. I don't know why I kept it. Keeping it felt like proof that something had happened at all. The second note came 3 nights later, different handwriting, different paper. This one read, "I opened the bathroom door." That line is small, but it flips things. It makes the room smaller. The bathroom is where you think you are alone. The idea of someone having been in that private space while I slept chewed at me. I checked every corner then. The air conditioning vent seemed cleaner than usual. The latch on the window felt odd. I told myself that I was tired, that hotel rooms play tricks on you. The third note, 3 nights after that, was the one that changed everything. Folded the same way, slid exactly beneath my door at 2:14 a.m. It said, "I'm in the room again." My hands were shaking before I opened the door. I put my shoulder against it like the motor could keep whatever was outside at bay. I peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The lights were dim. I listened. No footsteps.
No cartwheels, only the building's low mechanical hum. I remember thinking cold and precise. Whoever wrote this knows the habit of getting your door from the inside. Whoever wrote this could have been someone who knows hotels. I called the front desk. The person on the line had a voice thick with disbelief or scripted indifference. "We have no reports," she said. "You must be mistaken." I asked if they could check the surveillance. "There's nothing showing," she replied. She said it like a fact. But later, when I insisted, security allegedly watched footage that showed no one in the hallway at those times, no figure captured on camera, no one slipping notes under doors on film. That absence felt like a refusal, a way of making the threat unreal so the hotel wouldn't have to admit it. I searched for physical evidence. In the morning, I found the window latch to my corner room slightly warped, like someone had forced it. It wasn't smashed, but it didn't sit right. You can tell when metal lives. You can tell when it's been handled in a hurry. I told the front desk about the latch. The clerk shrugged and said maintenance would look at it tomorrow. Tomorrow felt like a lifetime. I booked the next possible flight out and left the hotel at 3 a.m., carrying the notes in my jacket pocket like proof of the world's narrowness. Afterward, the thing that haunted me wasn't the missing footage or the broken latch. It was waking up at home weeks later and checking the locks on my own apartment 3 times before sleep. The way an invasion of trust reshapes your sense of safety. The hotel told me later, through an email, that there were no records of forced entry and no staff reports. I kept the notes. I never returned. Allegedly, some local blogs picked up a version of this story after I wrote about it. Whether it made formal headlines is unclear, but the fear it left behind was real and uncomplicated. If you're hooked on stories like this and want more, hit like and subscribe. There are 3 more you won't want to sleep through. Story 2. Virginia. The key. I was exhausted when I arrived at that motel. The sign out front buzzed in the rain, neon sputtering, as if even the letters were tired. I'd driven late, missed dinner, and wanted only a bed. The clerk at check-in barely looked up. She handed me a key and a map on a napkin and smiled like someone doing a favor. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee, towels folded on the bed. But there was this pile, too. Papers on the desk, a jewelry case ajar. At first I thought I'd misremembered, that maybe I'd been given a room that had been cleaned for someone else. I told myself it was sloppy housekeeping. I locked the deadbolt anyway, because that's what you do. At around 1 a.m., I woke. The door handle was turning. I sat bolt upright, the sheets heavy and suddenly unfamiliar. For a second I thought it was in my head, the building settling, a wind shifting the door.
Then the knob moved again, deliberate, like someone testing it. There was a soft voice outside. "Housekeeping," it said. It sounded like a script. I called out, "One moment," but my voice sounded thin. The door didn't open. The handle stilled. I swallowed. After a long minute, I walked to the peephole and looked out. Someone was there, a silhouette of a large man, the shape of his shoulders broad, the outline of a cap against the dim hallway light. He knocked again, slower this time. "Housekeeping," he said. "Sorry, I'll leave now." That line, simple, apologetic, might have been enough to tell me it was over. Instead, I opened the door. He was carrying a roll of towels. He smelled like the laundry room. He was not the same person who had been in my room. After I told him to leave, I stepped back inside and found my stuff tossed, drawers open, toiletries scattered. It looked like someone had been looking for something specifically. My wallet was untouched, but there were things missing from my bag that I didn't notice until daylight. A pair of cufflinks, a small medication I keep in a tin. They were gone. Police were called. The officers looked tired. Their faces suggested they'd seen similar reports before. According to what I was told afterward, surveillance footage allegedly showed a man walking the hallways with what looked like a key or a keycard, entering more than one room. The footage, which the police reviewed, apparently showed him using a master key or a keycard to access rooms that weren't his. I cannot say definitively what the footage proved. I'm relaying what the officer said and what the hotel claimed to have on camera. I never saw the footage myself. For me, the proof was the overturned closet and the empty pocket of the things I'd keep with me on the road. The hotel manager offered a refund, a polite apology, and a promise they'd look into staff procedures. Those words have a weightlessness that is almost part of the threat. The idea that a staff member or someone with staff access can walk a hallway with an apparent right to use a key, that possibility is what keeps me from the front desk now. Allegedly, the man captured on tape has been described as large and capable of moving through busy corridors without attention. He could have been a vendor, a temporary repairman, or someone wearing the shape of a worker. Those are possibilities that do not comfort me. I packed my bags and left in the dark. I slept at a friend's house that night because the notion of returning to a room that had been rifled through felt like inviting in danger. The police said they'd follow up. Whether arrests were ever made, I don't know. The story was shared on neighborhood forums and by friends who knew what it meant to be vulnerable in a place that's supposed to be neutral ground. That neutral ground had cracked.
Story 3. New Jersey. The breathing. I had gone for a weekend away to get myself out of town and away from an ex that had latched onto my sleep. The hotel I chose was quiet, the kind with a small complimentary breakfast and a front desk manned by one person at all hours. I was in a middle-floor room facing the parking lot. It was late November. The windows rattled in the wind. I moved around the room, put my suitcase in the closet, and noticed the hangers had been pushed to one side. The closet door wasn't fully closed, and I swore I hadn't left it that way. At first, I chalked it up to previous guests. But later, when I stood inside the bathroom and heard something, a quiet click, like a breath being inhaled, the hairs on my arms stood up. It wasn't the building. It wasn't pipes or the heating. It sounded close, as if someone had their mouth right up against the wood of the closet. I tiptoed out and placed my hand on the knob. The door moved, soft, as if someone had been pressing from the inside with their palm. The sound of a breath. I retreated and called the front desk. The woman who answered sounded annoyed. "We have a small staff," she said. "If you think someone's in there, we'll check." When she came up, she laughed nervously and opened the closet with a flourish. "See? Empty." She smiled like she wanted me to feel foolish. They moved me to another room, down the hall. Apologetic, but not apologetic. I slept with the TV on to keep the silence from feeling like presence. Around 3 a.m., I heard the wheels of the housekeeping cart. The sound was ordinary, tin wheels on carpet, except it stopped directly outside my door. Then I heard heavy breathing, not the soft hint from the closet, but loud, deliberate inhales. Someone standing and breathing where no one should have been standing. I pressed my ear against the door, listening hard. The breath matched the rhythm I'd heard earlier near the closet. My stomach turned. I pounded on the door and screamed the way you'd scream in a dream until the front desk came running. They opened the door for me. The hallway was empty. The cart had moved on. The staff told me a housekeeper had been assigned to the floor, and later said she couldn't find her that morning. According to what the clerk told me after the fact, the housekeeper was missing from the roster for several hours. Missing. Those are exactly the kinds of words that lodge in your head and make it hard to sleep on planes later. I left before breakfast. I didn't wait for answers. The idea that someone could enter with a key, or hide in a closet until the right hour, or simply tiptoe through a building and breathe against strangers' doors, the idea of that slow, patient intrusion stayed with me like the taste of metal. The front desk offered a refund and an apology. They said they would review key control. "We take guest safety seriously," they told me. Words that slid off the surface like rain.
I never got to the bottom of why the housekeeper was unaccounted for that night. Allegedly, a missing staff member was noted in internal logs, but I do not have police records to cite. What I remember is the breath, the cartwheels stopping, the quiet dishonesty of a place that pretended everything was fine. Story 4, Summer 2023. The staff account. I worked hotels for a few summers when I was young. Night shifts and afternoon shifts, all the jobs that make a person learn the anatomy of a building, where the boilers live, which pipes rattle at dawn, which doors stick in humidity. The place where I worked one summer was old. Low ceilings, a lobby that smelled like lemon disinfectant, a pool with red plastic loungers. People assumed working there desensitized us. It didn't. It made us keener. One night near the end of my shift, I was standing by the pool picking lint from the lifesaver ring when the thing slid off its hook and splashed into the water. There was no one around. No child, no drunk. The pool area was shuttered after 9. The lifesaver hit the water like an accusation. I walked over to fish it out. It was heavier than it looked. My hands were slick. There was a speed I can't describe, a tightening behind the eyes. Later, I was sent to fix a toilet in a vacant room. It was empty, stripped down, a place that smelled of bleach and dry wood. I crawled under the sink to tighten a bolt. The room was quiet, too quiet. Then, mid-screw, the air in the room went cold. It's the sort of cold that doesn't come from HVAC. It's slower, like the temperature of a space that has waited. I straightened up. In the shadowed corner of the room stood a tall shape. Tall like a man, but wrong like a silhouette cut from thick black cloth. No face, no features, just a presence. For a second, my brain tried to reason. Coworker? Prank? Outside worker? But there was no movement in the hall, no muffled voices, no light under the door. I could feel it. That's a dangerous thing to say, but there's a sensation of being watched that is itself physical, like a pressure at the back of the neck. The shadow shifted. It moved as if my human senses were tuning for something it didn't want me to perceive. I scrambled out from under the sink and ran. I didn't grab the toolbox. I left shoes untied. I sprinted to the lobby and told the night manager. He laughed at first, then his laugh thinned. He took my statement quietly. "People see things on night shift," he said. I didn't want his validation. I wanted the room to have been empty. I quit the next day, not because of money or hours, but because the shape of that night lingered. Months later, when I drove past the hotel, the poolside lifesaver still swung gently on its hook. There's a photograph of me from that summer, my hair shorter, my face younger. If you asked anyone who worked with me, they'd say I wasn't the type to invent a story, but I can't prove what I saw.
I can only say what it felt like. The world made smaller into a corner that contained something too big to name. I told a few coworkers. One swore he'd seen the same thing crouched by the boiler room. Another said he'd heard footsteps in an empty corridor. The manager asked us to keep things quiet. The line between human trespass and something else is thin in hotels, and sometimes it is as banal as someone with a key, and sometimes it is an image you cannot explain. We live with the ambiguity. We keep the doors locked and still. Patterns, questions, and the aftermath. Across these stories there are repeating shadows. A folded note slid under a door, a man walking with a key, breath at a closet, a black shape in an empty room, different forms of the same violation, someone entering the private space of a guest, and in some cases being able to do so because systems meant to protect privacy failed or were exploited. There are the human explanations that must be considered. Keys and keycards are technologies that grant access. Staff have legitimate reasons to enter rooms, and sometimes someone abuses that trust. Rotating temporary staffs or third-party contractors can create gaps in oversight. Surveillance cameras can fail or be pointed where they don't capture corners. A missing housekeeper can be a human error in scheduling, but it can also be an enabling circumstance. In the Virginia case, according to what was reported to the guest and the police, footage allegedly showed a man entering rooms with a key. In other stories, the only record was a warped latch or notes tucked under doors. Evidence ranges from physical anomalies to eyewitness terror. And then there is the element that resists neat explanation. The staff account from summer 2023 ends with a tall black shape in a corner. I will not present a supernatural conclusion as fact. What I will say is this: the experience of being watched, of sensing the presence of an intruder without seeing a known human form, is as real as any camera frame. It can be psychological, it can be environmental, and it can be the start of a chain of events that leads to real danger. Some of the people who told me these stories suggested a haunting, others called it trespass. Both words imply vulnerability. The emotional aftermath is the same. People who live through these incidents describe a changed relationship to hotels. Simple actions, checking the lock twice, listening for breathing, leaving the light on, become habits born of unease. One guest never returned to the chain where the notes were left under his door. Another refused to stay overnight in any place where key control was lax. The staff member quit. These are not minor inconveniences. They are shifts in how people experience the ordinary world. If you travel, and most of us do, what do you take from these stories? How do you make your night safer without turning every hotel into a fortress? First, be aware that access control matters. Ask at check-in how keys are managed. Who has master keys? Do they use key cards that can be deactivated? If something feels off, insist on a room change that is not just down the hall but on a different floor if possible. There is dignity in being persistent about your own safety. Second, make the room evidence-ready. Photograph anything that looks tampered with. Note the time and any staff interactions. If you find a note, keep it. If something is missing, request a police report and a copy. These steps do not guarantee remedy, but they can create a paper trail that matters to authorities or insurance. Third, listen to your sense of safety. It sounds obvious, but it's hard in the moment when you don't want to be dramatic. If the hair on your neck stands up, don't wait for the manager to reassure you. Get to a public space, a lobby, a 24-hour cafe, a sheriff's precinct, until you feel secure again. Businesses are rarely eager to escalate, but your immediate safety is worth your insistence. Fourth, consider traveling with small, inexpensive security tools, a portable door alarm, a wedge, or a travel-safe lock. None of these are perfect, but they create extra time and noise that can deter opportunists. Again, these are practicality measures, not guarantees. But beyond practicalities, there is the moral pattern. Institutions that manage private space owe a duty of care. Hotels advertise anonymity and neutrality. When those promises fail, the harm is psychological as well as physical. Front desk scripts, "We take guest safety seriously," can feel perfunctory. Real accountability is rare in the immediate aftermath. That is the part that lingers, the absence of a satisfactory answer, and the way small oversights compound into a crisis of trust. Final thoughts. There is a specific kind of fear that comes from the knowledge that you may be observed where you think you are alone. Notes slid under doors, a key used without you knowing, the sound of breathing beyond a closet. These are all variations on the theme of stolen privacy. They aren't always violent in the cinematic sense, but they are intimate violations that leave scratches on how a person moves through the world. Some of these stories were shared widely and were reportedly covered by local outlets. Others remain personal accounts, passed from voice to voice. I've qualified what I could. I have not named businesses or claimed that any individual was guilty of a crime without evidence. What I can say with certainty is this: each person I spoke with described the after effect, the way normal hotel sounds become suspicious, the way silence can feel like an accomplice. That is a kind of damage that doesn't show up on a police report, but is nonetheless real. If you have a hotel horror story, something that unnerved you in a room, a note you found, or an exchange with staff that felt like it crossed a line, please share it in the comments.
These stories matter because they are warnings, and also because they are a record. Check the description for timestamps and notes on what was alleged and what was corroborated. If you were involved in any of these incidents and have verifiable documentation and want your account to be understood in full, you can add context in the comments. And finally, sleep the way you can. Lock what you can lock. Keep the light on if that makes sense. Put your bag between the bed and the door. These are not heroic acts. They are small rituals to regain a sense of control. Hotels are supposed to be neutral shelters on the road. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are not. In the spaces in between, people like you and me learn to be vigilant. These 4 accounts, notes in Pennsylvania, a man with a key in Virginia, breathing at a New Jersey door, and a staff member who saw a black shape in summer 2023, are reminders that the ordinary can become threatening, and that the systems designed to protect us can fail in quiet ways. Tell your story, be careful, and when you lock your door tonight, listen for the little things that might tell you whether you're alone or not.